Hi everyone, Mrs. Jones here. In this video, we are going to do a quick little introduction into something called the zero product property. But before we dive into that, I want to do a quick little review of the distributive property, which you learned last year in 7th grade. Remember that when we think about distribution, we think about handing out or giving something. And so when we look at math with the distribution, we are thinking about our coefficient here, the number that's in front of our parentheses, and how I'm going to multiply or how I'm going to give it to everything inside the parentheses. So if you're feeling really good about this, you can pause the video here and I'll reveal the answers in a second. If you want a little bit more of a review, I'll just talk through a couple of these. So the first answer here is going to be 10x minus 8 because 2 times 5x is 10x and 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. The next one should feel really similar, 12x minus 15xy. The difference here is that remember when you multiply two variables like we're doing here, you're going to have both included in your answer, so 15xy. The next answer is 3x squared minus 7x. Remember when you do x times x, you're getting x squared. And the last one here is a little tricky. When you think about the order of operations, remember that this right here is multiplication. And so we need to take care of this multiplication, meaning the distributive property, before we deal with the 7. So your final answer here should be negative 2x plus 15. All right, so I want you to pause the video and I want you to try this problem on the left. All right, you're back. Hopefully this felt like returning to the basics of 7th grade. You remember that you are going to distribute the 3, you'll add 12 to both sides, and then divide by 3. So your answer should be 22/3. Now, what if I gave you a question that looked like this? I want you to pause the video and try this one. All right, my guess is that one was quite a bit trickier, and that's all right. So when you think about these two equations, x times x minus 4 equals 10, and x times x minus 4 equals 0. The good news is that by the end of 8th grade, you are going to be able to do both of these. Right now, we're not going to focus on this one. We're going to come back to this top one. Our focus right now is on this bottom one. And I want you to notice the difference between these two equations. The major difference here is this 0. Okay, the fact that this equation equals 0 is key. Think about what I said at the beginning of this video, zero product property. So we're looking for that 0. All right, so zero product property, also known, you'll probably hear your math teachers call it ZPP. So zero product property is when you have an x squared, an x, and nothing else. So I want you to keep that in mind, x squared, x, and nothing else. So if I'm thinking about multiplying numbers to get to a product of 0, meaning the answer to my multiplication is 0, how do we get there? Well, hopefully remember that we always have to be multiplying by 0. 0 times 10 will get me to 0. Okay, 5 times 0 will get me to 0. When I multiply to get to 0, one of the factors has to be 0. So what this means, if we think about it a little more algebraically, is that if I have a times b equals 0, that means that a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. The only way for me to multiply two numbers and get to 0 is for one of them to be 0. Or if you're a more visual and maybe picture-focused person, you could also think about it here and that either the triangle needs to equal 0 or the square needs to equal 0. So let's dive in. 3 times b equals 0. This means 3, I can't change the number, right? It is the 3. If I think about my blue square, this means that b has to equal 0, right? If I were to plug in 0 into this equation and do 3 times 0 equals 0, that is a true equation, okay? What if it gets a little trickier, okay? What if we think about something like this? 5 times x minus 1 equals 0. Well, now we're dealing with something more complicated. It's not just a variable, but now we have a bit of an expression embedded in here. This means that I now need to set this as an equation. Oops. I know that x minus 1 must equal 0, right? That whole blue box has to equal 0. Well, if I think about how to solve this, okay, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. That means that x can equal 1. To prove that to you, we're going to plug it in, that this actually works. So we're going to take our 1 and we're going to plug it in here. 5 times 1 minus 1 equals 0. Well, you know that 1 minus 1 is 0. And does 5 times 0 equal 0? Yes, it does. Okay, so what's happening here is we're getting a little bit more complex and we're having to build an equation in order to solve our original equation. Let's try another one. Now, oh no, we have red that we have to solve for and blue that we have to solve for. So you're going to notice that as you're solving these ZPP equations, you could have one equation or one answer, you could have two answers, you could have three answers, you could have four answers. You'll notice that oftentimes you're going to have more than one solution. So thinking about my red triangle, this is simple, right? One step. I know that x can be 0. This is a little more complicated. I need to set up an equation in order to solve. So I'm going to set it equal to 0 because I want this blue square to be 0. I subtract 4, so I can say x equals -4. So I now have two solutions. Let me show you how this works really quickly. If I plug in 0 into both x's, I end up with 0 times 4 equals 0. That checks out. If I plug in -4 into both x's, I end up with -4 times 0, and that checks out. So both answers are true, and both answers result in a 0 solution. All right. What do you notice is slightly different here? I want you to pause the video, look at the top equation, look at the bottom equation, and tell me what you notice. All right, hopefully you see lots of similarities, and this should hopefully feel easy and straightforward. X equals 0, right? We already did it at the top. The difference here, this is where it's different. X plus 4, x minus 4. X plus 4 resulted in a -4. I now have x minus 4. Whoops, let's go back to our color coding. X minus 4 equals 0. So my solution here is going to be x equals +4. Better. There you go. X equals +4. All right, moving on. Okay, we're starting to get trickier. One step at a time. Let's focus on our red triangle. 2x can equal 0. Remember, I'm creating equations to help solve my equation. You know how to solve this. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So my answer here for my red triangle is x can be 0 because 0 divided by 2 is 0. So there's one solution. Now for my blue box, okay, x plus 1 can equal 0. So I'm subtracting by 1 on both sides, meaning my solution is x equals -1. All right. Now we have two things that both have addition with them. Okay, here's my red triangle. Excuse my triangle drawings. X plus 3 equals 0. So that means I subtract 3 from both sides. So x equals -3 is one of my solutions. And if I'm thinking about my blue box, x plus 2 could be 0. So I'm subtracting 2, which means x equals -2 is my other solution. Okay. All right, x minus 4 times 3x plus 1. You'll notice here that the blue aspect is a little more complicated and involves a couple extra steps. So x minus 4 equals 0. I'm hoping at this point this feels straightforward and you can see that that's going to give you an answer of x equals 4. The 3x plus 1, involves a little bit more from us. All right, so let's set our equation up. 3x plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I'm at 3x equals -1. Now there's another step. Now I have to divide by 3 on both sides. So my final answer is x equals -1/3. Okay. All right. So hopefully these feel good to you at this point. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to try all 4 of these. And when you come back, I'll reveal the answers. All right, you're back. Hopefully that felt good. And here we go. Your first solution, you should get x equals 0 and x equals 1. The next one, you should get x equals 3 and x equals -5. The next one, you should get x equals 7 and x equals -2. And the last one, you should get x equals -5/2 and x equals 7/4. Okay, one more type of problem. Oh no, now we have 3 colors. How many solutions do you think we have now? 3, okay? If you haven't learned by now, I love to color code this. So let's think about this. Now it's almost like we have an A times a B times a C equals 0, which means A can be 0, B can be 0, or C can be 0. So this one's straightforward. X equals 0, right? There's nothing there's nothing trickier. Now, 2x plus 1 can equal 0. If I subtract 1, 2x equals -1, whoops, and divide by 2. So my answer here is x equals -1/2. And last but not least, well, let's do a circle here. 5x minus 3 equals 0. So I'm adding 3. 5x equals 3. 5 by 5. So x equals 3/5. 1, 2, 3 solutions. All right, I'm going to give you one more problem for you to try on your own. This one right here. Pause the video, try it, and then come back and I'll reveal the solution. All right, you're back. Hopefully that felt okay. Your 3 solutions should be x equals 2/3, x equals -1/6, and x equals 4. All right, I hope that felt all right. Remember, ZPP is zero product property. You're looking for that 0 at the end, and you're thinking about how you can multiply to get a product of 0. We're going to do a few more of these over the next few days, a couple more challenging aspects of ZPP, but I hope this felt like a good introduction. Let us know if you have any questions, and good luck with your work.